Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, How Modern Data Teams Cut Risk, Boost Quality, and Move Faster with AI-Native Platforms. I'm Cliff Webb, organizer for this event, and thank you for coming. So before we get started, a few housekeeping items. If you have questions or comments, as they come to mind, please use the questions pane in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll address all questions at the end of the webinar. We're also recording today's event. You'll get an email with a link to this recording, usually by end of day. Check your junk mail folder. If it's not in your inbox, that's usually where it is. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Geoffrey Cann.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, and thank you for joining us on this webinar today on how modern data teams cut their risk, boost quality, and move faster with AI-native data platforms. My name is Geoffrey Cann, and I'm an international author and expert on digital innovation in oil and gas, and I'll be chairing today's discussion. Now, before I introduce the webinar guests, we share a bit about how this session will proceed. On the interface, you'll find a Q&A feature. Please use this at any time to direct any questions you might have, and we'll endeavor to respond to them, if not in the session, then shortly afterwards. You might also see, from time to time, a polling question pop up in the Q&A, and if so, we'd love to get your reactions to that by typing in your response. Now, as for me, I have a series of questions I'm going to pose to our guests to steer the conversation. Joining me today are Shravan Gunda, the CEO and founder of Kaarvi, and Meher Surendra, the lead for customer success and operations at Xecta, who provide next-generation production, surveillance, and optimization solutions for upstream oil and gas producers of all sizes. Shravan and Meher, welcome to the webinar.
Hello, Geoffrey. Thanks, Jeff. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, and just let me start with a little bit of preamble here, just some observations based on my own work in oil and gas. This industry features a huge range of data collection and analysis systems that span decades, as it turns out. Even the simplest of decisions often require the integration of multiple disparate data sets of uncertain provenance. With these incompatible and incomplete fields, data is in everything. It's in spreadsheets and logs and documents, charts, drawings, graphs. The level of manual manipulation that we have to go through in this industry is quite high. And the volumes generated and consumed by professionals in the industry is extraordinary. And to be blunt, the business drivers of the industry do not consistently compel high-quality data management practices. So AI, as it turns out, is both a victim to this landscape, but it also is a potential solution. And so with that, let me just turn to just a brief personal introduction from each of you so that we can just situate your backgrounds and how you fit this particular conversation. Meher, I'll start with you, but just a little personal background, if you please.
Sure. So I started out as a petroleum engineer, transitioned into reservoir management, and somewhere 6-7 years ago, we started developing technologies and then transitioning into implementing those in the client side. Now that's what I do at Xecta, is pretty much make sure our tools that are AI and learning deliver value to all the clients overseas. So I get a first-hand view into what their data systems are looking like, what are the main problems that they are facing, or eventually we will face as solution providers. That's my best.
That was brilliant. It was great that you got the background that spans the industry, both domestic and global, onshore, offshore, and I've seen these challenges from one end to the other. Shravan, just a personal introduction to you. What's your background?
Hey everyone, it's again wonderful to be here. So I started up as a systems engineer, Linux, Windows, and then transitioned into enterprise data management. I worked for MNCs around the world, starting from Ligren India, Private Limited, to HPE, then worked for Fannie Mae. And we also worked for oil and gas industry for a long time. And then with the data problems that I see across the industries and domains, so we came up with this idea of tackling the data with AI. Again, Agentic AI 200%. That's our goal. And don't just manage your data, master it is the motto. So
It's brilliant. Yeah, I know in my books I'd actually highlighted that at least, and this was before AI was even a thing, that we would be able to use AI to help solve some of our data challenges. Shravan, let's start though with at a high level. What is the problem that you see across the industry that ultimately led you to invest your time to build Kaarvi?
So that's a great question. The problem that I see is basically the expertise or the resources who are dedicated to provide solutions on data insights and actual data, generating value. They actually work on data janitorial work where they're cleaning up and spending 80% of the time, on data cleanup and making the data ready. I think that was the main, and I saw that across the domains. And it's not just that. In recent times, we have been speaking to multiple customers, and it's the same problem. So the Kaarvi comes in there, perfect with Agentic AI that's equipped and trained for almost 2.5 years now, with multiple datasets that can actually not just detect your data problems, but also resolve them with a click of a button. So that was the main idea, but I think that it got over to a certain space where the end users, who are the actual data users, can also do this without writing a single line of code.
Yeah, I think that's an important attribute to this. The systemic challenge of the industry is finding the time and the energy and the expertise to clean up data. So why not use AI tools to help with that task? And I think that's probably the breakthrough insight. Why is this harder rather than data cleanup? Why is it been getting harder rather than easier over time? I know these AI tools are making it easier now, but what else is going on that makes this such a challenge?
So I think that the decision making, if you see over the years, so to get an accurate decision or you have to take an accurate decision, you need a lot of data. You need to, like you said, you have to go back some hundreds of years on, let's say, a particular reservoir to get a particular insight, right? So the more the data, the more the chaos. So you have tons of data to deal with, and it has been populating there and been versioned and reversioned so many times for over the years. And the anomalies and the data quality, the general data quality issues affect the output. And the decision that you are going to take is 200% dependent on the output, right? So what Kaarvi does is it makes sure none of those exist when it gets to you to take it forward in your process. So that's what Kaarvi does, a transformative application with AI.
Meher, does this align with what you're seeing? And at Xecta, you're working with companies around the world to embrace optimization technology. But is this common to your what you see out there?
Right. It's fairly common. More often than you think it is not, right? The first conversation we have with clients is, okay, let's see what we can deploy on your existing data sets. And then they have this moment saying, okay, we need data. And then they look at each other like, where are these data sets? Because like one of the points you made in the introduction was, this is a decades old thing, right? So you have gathering from the 90s, 2000s, and now you have high frequency data that's like every 1 second, right? So how do you make sure all that is clean, it's sanctioned, so that your decisions which are driven by that data are actually right? So organizations now also have these AI mandates, say, for the management teams, where they're saying, hey, by the end of the year, demonstrate a use case. Now, where do those management teams go? To data, right? But if that is your problem, or if it's not key, then how does that mandate get? So that's where all the data part comes in, and maintaining that, and making sure.
Yeah, where have you seen poor data quality have the biggest negative impact? Is it time to get to value? Is it just energy cleaning data? Where's the cost here?
It's multiple things, right? Like ultimately what happens is your organizational value depends on your calls that you're making, right? Like how does your organization reach its potential? Here we're talking about oil and gas assets, right? So you want to hit recovery percentages of 40, 50%. How do you get there? If you don't have your data sets and if you want to get there faster using these AI models, that data has to be good, which means your models are good, which means your organization values it. So the impact is all through that, right? And teams will suffer trying to go through that data, clean it up, get to that decision. So it delays what you can do today. And given what happens in the world so fast, you want to be ahead of that curve, right?
But what consumes all the time if in getting the data ready? Is it looking for errors? Is it consistency issues? Where's the time go?
So it could be a combination of all of these. It could be missing data because someone has not recorded this back in the day. And we need that data because at the end of the day, AI is trained on history. So your history has to be good. So either there's a missing number or there's a negative value, negative rate value, which is not physically possible. Or it could be an error, like someone instead of putting 100 PSI missed a decimal and now it's 1000 PSI. So it could be a combination of all of these. And it exacerbates because if you have 1,000 wells, 1 year you have 3650 data points per day for 1 day, 1 well, and you multiply that with years of history, it just becomes very unmanageable at that scale.
Yeah, unmanageable certainly with traditional tools. And I think this is where Kaarvi came into being to try and address. Have I got that right, Shravan? Is this consistent with what you're trying to solve here?
Yes, and I mean that's the base. Like I said, that's where we started building AI, and we started training our AI agents to do. And right now we got to a point where we are at 100% accuracy by very unique architecture models that we incorporated, which doesn't really have to go through multiple iterations, but it actually implements something called critic architecture, which only few of the companies in the world use. And with that, we are trying to get to 200% accuracy, and also make sure the AI that learns is learning on the patterns of your data. So the application right now is at a point where as soon as you upload the data, the whole application agents will be behaving exactly to how the data was uploaded. So for example, oil and gas data gets uploaded. All the agents actually tend to behave like oil and gas SMEs. And when bankers upload their data, so it becomes a whole financial institute SMEs. So that capability has been added, and we are seeing tremendous. Actually, I get surprised sometimes on how the values and the output comes up. So yes, with the quality issues and anomalies, like Meher mentioned, when there is a negative value that can actually affect the output. How do you highlight that? I mean, it's terabytes and terabytes of data, right? So Kaarvi actually does a pretty good job there, and
designed to really get at these things. And you may at the same time you may know why these existing tools and approaches, things like products like Excel or other database structures that people might be using, why those are really ill-suited to this. I mean, volume would be one, but what are some of the other challenges that legacy world has in dealing with the data issues?
So the main problem that I saw is when you build a product for certain workflows, correct? So if your data doesn't fit into that box, then probably you might not even get the desired output that you want because your data doesn't fit into that box. So keeping that in mind, we built Kaarvi as a platform. So that's why I said the agents behave and mold themselves to the data, the kind of data that it gets uploaded, right? So if they see something called pipeline integrity data, then they start behaving like pipeline integrity SMEs. And that's huge when it comes to the technology revolution side, right? So having a friend and an SME like for you who knows what you want, but you don't know how to get there. And these agents are acting as SMEs to help you get there. I mean, that's a huge achievement from Kaarvi's side.
Yeah, it'll feel a little bit like magic, I suspect. Suddenly you have a pipeline integrity engineer on your shoulder who's looking at helping you with your data and say, hey, hang on a second, have you thought about this? And I found this anomaly, and et cetera. Let me turn back to you, Meher. If when this problem gets solved properly, because you will have seen it on the ground, I suspect, what changes or gets materially better that you can see?
So what does happen is it frees up the actual engineer's time, right? So you have a reliable data set. You deploy an AI layer on top of that gets you to the one yard line, for example. Now all the engineer has to do is take it to go, right? So what that did is it took away all the grunt work from the engineer, and he can now focus on the decision. And because the AI learns from all the previous decisions, right? So it keeps getting better. So time saving is one of the biggest things that we've seen where the engineer, if you're responsible for 100 wells, you deploy your layer and then instead of looking at all 100 the same way, you look at the top 10 that are anomalous or are going to provide you the highest value. So that man-hour reduction is humongous, right? And another thing that we've seen is the integration between things. Like once you have a data orchestration or pipeline that does all things for you, that need not stay just in the engineer's purview. As in, that data pipeline can serve another person, can serve the business needs, like even create an executive dashboard, right? So that can go through all the layers of your organization. So there's not just one engineer's time, it's enablement of a lot of different processes in the organization. That's a multi-level advantage that these AI layers do.
Yeah, I'd certainly have heard many executives say to me in my career in oil and gas that they really want their organizations to be learning organizations, able to advance. And it sounds like these kind of tools do create that ability to learn and extend learning across the organization in ways that are otherwise can't be done with modern tools. Shravan, what have you seen that gets materially better above and beyond time savings and the like? What benefits accrue here?
So what I saw is basically one, again, on Meher's comment, not just time, right? But it's the freedom that engineer gets to actually go back and try something new again, because he doesn't have to again start from the start, which actually takes 20 hours of his time, right? AI did its 16 hours of work, and now it is also helping him in its next 4 hours of work, which he can do it in 20 minutes, basically. So that 20 hours gets to 20 minutes. So imagine he has so much time to go back and try something new or add a different perspective to his solution. That's one. Second thing that I see is, again, like I said, I get sometimes surprised with what AI does, especially Kaarvi. Is basically it adds its own perspective on an element of query that you might have missed it, but it brings it up and says, hey, because of this, in the summary, when you go to Hey Kaarvi and ask a question, it actually summarizes not just the query that you asked, but it also gives you might also need this. And that key insight or key highlight, man, I got a feedback that how did it know it? How did it know my mind, right? So those kind of, when I hear that feedback, I feel very proud of Kaarvi AI.
That's that.
Right. So those two were very, I think those are the highlights. And
just to that, if I may, is if you did not have like a data automation QC platform, like something like Kaarvi, what most organizations do is they hire third-party system integrators, right? And that's essentially a headcount that comes, looks at your data, cleans it up, and uploads it. but that takes time. It's still manual. Maybe some degree of automation exists, but it's also cost. That's something that the organization has to bear. I think using a platform like Kaarvi to do that, or at least supplement it and do most of the heavy lifting, will reduce that cost by a lot, at least. Right? So that's a very big advantage that a platform like Kaarvi brings.
Yeah, I think there's another subtle advantage that is lurking in there. When that work to clean up data and prepare data for AI engines is outsourced to a third party, all of the insight that you gain by doing the work to repair the data and understand why it's behaving the way it is gone. That's lost to your third party. Whereas in this model, you get to keep that inside, which is supportive of culture change and supportive of the organization's ability to learn and grow. And I think there's a value proposition there that I think speaks to what Kaarvi can actually do. When you're putting the tool in, Meher, what was the first or practical change that you could see taking place in the organization? Was it in governance? Was it improving data quality? Was it better decision making faster? Was it like where did the values start to really show up quickly?
It's again a mix of everything, right? Like, so with better data, when you have good data, good decisions, so you get value, right? But also when you do things internally, like just the point you made, that knowledge stays within the organization. So for example, I say, hey, this gauge on this well is consistently giving wrong data. Let's go fix it for the next cycle, it's correct, right? So that's one thing that happens. So in the past, what happened was data cleanup was a one-time. We just said, hey, go clean this data. But with platforms like this, what happens is it becomes a process that's saying, don't just do it one time. You have to be on top of it. And that drives a lot of the efficiency within an organization. So it's multiple areas that get impacted with something like this.
What kind of resistance do you encounter internally when you try to address these data quality challenges? And one thing I'm really interested in is the reaction of bringing AI and agentic AI tools into the organizations. Are you picking up a resistance to using these tools, or is the environment more open to using them than one would think?
There is resistance because remember, these are all publicly traded firms, so there's a confidentiality thing. They just don't want to let anybody in. So that exists, but that you cannot solve it, but you can address it. The second thing is not like what is the idea of AI for general oil and gas engineering? Until late last year, it's been ChatGPT or somebody saying, hey, just reformat this email in a professional tone. That was the breadth of things. But now what we are proposing is, hey, we can actually impute this pressure data and hence a calculation of it. Now he's like, oh, you're going to work on my data, right? Now I need to completely understand this. I need to have complete visibility into this because emails are okay. It has an impact on business. So that is what is sometimes manifests itself as resistance, right? The good thing is I
was going to say, I way around that is I think a level of transparency that the technology, please have the technology explain how it's getting to its conclusions. Sometimes that's challenging in AI because it's not always clear how it got to the right answer. But how?
Yeah, if it's a black box, then you'll have the challenges you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So keeping it open and then treating it like going back to that email example, when you say, hey, I'd like to meet you versus I'm really hoping to see you tomorrow. Those versions are very visible to you. Same thing happens, which is I've detected 1,000 null items. What would you like to do? You can tell me or I could do it for you. So when that conversation happens, that transparency kicks in. So confidence kicks in, so adoption increases. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point around overcoming resistance. Is you turn you provide the analysis, but you give back to the engineer the opportunity or the responsibility to make the next move. You just don't automatically go and make changes arbitrarily. That's one thing you found to help overcome resistance. Shravan, in the design of Kaarvi, how do you design these tools so that resistance is, easily addressed or not so difficult that makes it impossible to move forward?
I think the organizations basically who are dealing with proprietary information, their biggest problem is giving out the data to some SaaS application that's sitting somewhere in the cloud, right? So we made sure we address that because I come from the oil and gas background and I've worked with multiple NOCs. So my first design requirement was this should be able to be deployed easily on an on-prem with very minimal infrastructure requirement. So how do we do that? So basically, all the models that you get, including AI agents, will have requirements, basic infrastructure requirements, and once we meet it, only the billing API will have internet access. Everything can be accessed from on-prem. So you're not actually sharing the data anywhere out of the organization. Your firewall, everything stays below firewall. So that's one. Second is, I think the more use case and the so it's like a iPhone. When you got an iPhone without keypad, the first iPhone, I think the resistance was, how do I use it? I mean, it was super exciting. I would imagine, right? For example, the kids who loved technology to try new things, they were first to buy. But the guys who got used to the keypads, I mean, what was an iPhone? But see today, every house has an iPhone, and without an iPhone, you can't exist. I mean, other mobiles also got to iPhone design. I think it's a behavioral and also training and usage. And when we come up with use cases that can actually address your business problems, right? Like we just discussed, we are actually saving 20 hours to 20 minutes. And that's not just a say, it's a challenge. We did that with multiple engineers and everyone left awestruck. So those kind of values, when they're unmatched, I think the companies would come forward to try them. And once you try, the value. I think there is that hope and adoption.
You do. Yeah, and you've touched on this whole question of value, which makes me turn my thinking now to how do you explain the value to an organization if they embark down this path to clean up their data. Meher, when you're dealing with clients and these data questions crop up, how do you frame the value? Is it just as simple as, oh, you'll save some time with your engineers, or how would you see and express that value capture for them?
So the value, I would actually frame it 3 ways, right? First bucket would be the recovery value, right? For example, something decision that was based on bad data, maybe you course correct, get it back on track. That's recovery. The second one would be acceleration, right? So things that you have not touched as a business process, you fix your data and the time to decision is vastly reduced, right? So that's an acceleration of
time
value in your organization. That's a second one. And the third, there is the strategic value, right? As an organization, you are adopting the latest and the greatest. Then you're moving forward. And what does that mean to your organization as your organizational value, your stock price, right? You demonstrate these use cases, you're better than everybody, your cost per barrel goes down, everything is trending in the right direction. So it would be a 3-step value process of these 3 bucket values is the way I frame.
Yeah, I think that's important to frame it. Not it has to be done in business terms that the business professionals can understand, specifically chief financial officers, because their ability to endorse these ideas and help them move them in the organization are that important. Shravan, if companies do improve their data management, what does it enable here? What outcomes can they achieve?
So I would give this answer in a multiple ways, but I think last week I spoke with our CEO who was actually talking about depending on so many teams to get a report that can drive him to get a decision, right? So basically he wait for 2 weeks and then he go back and he ask another change and it takes 2 more weeks and the business requirement changed already. Now he got training from me for 20 minutes directly, and it took him 20 minutes to load his. Again, he is not a techie. He loaded his Excel sheets, asked a question. Kaarvi gave him a report, not just a explanation, but also dashboard. Now, what he said was more than gold. So he said, right now, what I feel is I can take this business and with this Kaarvi as my co-partner, I can change this business course to tremendous levels right now because he has real-time insights. There is no human error. He gets the real-time insights and he knows what his 2024 sales were and he knows what he is doing different, what he has to do different to get to 2026 sales. That is nowhere matching because of the insights that Kaarvi provide. Right? So that's speaks it all. I mean, when you get feedbacks like this, and the ease of using, like you said, it takes a generation to try new things, and you see that these big organizations to make a change, it's very, very hard. But Kaarvi, its built-in nature is basically handholding. So it takes you from ingestion to exploration to insights, and not just insights, transformations. You can text to transform, and you should really see that trying, and it's magic. Like you said, you just explain it in plain English, and it transforms. It builds a transformation ETL pipeline that you wouldn't have done it. You would have done it, but it takes weeks.
Yeah, the time savings here are really, really key. I also suspect, though, that the improvements to data do mean that other investments companies might be making in AI, the value of those investments will go up because the AI tools are getting fed better quality data. Is that accurate? Is that fair?
200%. And it's not just speed. It's the perspective of an artificial intelligence that gets added to that output, right? So like I said, Kaarvi AI adds his own perspective that you might have missed. And it actually does. For example, we are again talking about the sales data because I just had a conversation with that CEO. So he got a perspective on what he can do differently. I mean, imagine that to get that information he actually in the traditional way has to hire multiple teams, and they have to spend so much time and get insight, and all that happens in seconds. So the quality also changes. It's not just the speed. So your decision quality changed because of Kaarvi. Your speed obviously changed. Your money, like we spoke about, resource headcounts, all that is gone, and you don't need those expertise anymore to build complex systems or pipelines or transformations, I would say, to get your data. It is all handled by AI. Like 90% of the work is done. So I think that's the value I see.
Yeah, it's interesting to find out if that's on the ground experience as well. Meher, what is your sense? Are you seeing value and movement in that same direction? This is where these tools and data quality is giving a lift to other AI investments.
Absolutely. So when we started in Xecta, when we started doing this overseas, one of the things that we were doing was identifying which wells to work over, which presents an opportunity. What that meant was earlier when an engineer would pick, hey, I want to work this over well or intervene in this well, now it's automatically populated. So your rig schedule gets automatically pointed in the highest value, right? So you can say, these are the top 10 highest potential, let's go work on this. Earlier, that did not exist because you did not know what your potential would be, right? So we kind of directed your logistics and your actions into a certain value bucket, right? So that's one of the things that we've seen happening. And as an extension to that, now what we do is what we call closed loop optimization. So earlier, at least, you now generate data and results that are fed to the feed, to what we call PLCs, right? That actually turn on the choke or turn off the choke or do something. The result is then observed, hey, we're getting more rate with this particular setting. That comes back to the model, the model's trained on it, then it improves. So that's what we call closed loop. So we started with something, now we're going towards that closed loop optimization into like a whole autonomous field that manages itself once you have these AI models, which get predicated on good decisions, which depends fundamentally on the data.
Yeah, I think one of the subtleties here is if you look at a classic oil and gas field, there'll be an 80-20 rule at play. 80% of the production is coming out of 20% of the wells. And so the natural inclination is to point all of your engineering know-how at that 20%, because that's where all the value is. But what it also means is that 80% of your wells get very little attention. It feels to me like we might be switching that calculus now, where we will be able to take these tools developed and trained and apply them to the 80% of the wells we never really get to in a fulsome way. And I think there's a value uplift story that's lurking there. What's your perspective, Meher? Do you think that's an angle that companies might be able to exploit?
Yeah, absolutely. So even that 80-20 rule that you just said, if 80% of your wells are auto-managed, right? Like even if you don't improve them, but keep them delivering what their potential is, you're going to now focus on the 20% and improve those, right? So at least that brings a lot of value because it frees up time, and as an organization, you focus on the high value, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that your others are not of control. That's a very, very big value for it.
Yeah, I think this is a very good time for us to take a look at how the tool actually works. Meher, I know you're a user, so
Sure.
you get to work with the tool in real world situations on real world data. Are you able to kind of share a little bit about how the tool works in your context?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when Shravan said he's building this, I want to kind of you to test this, break this. I did a bit of testing. So the context for what I was going to show was a lot of the M&A activity that happened late last year, where majors were shooting up things. Then I was thinking to myself, if I have the money, how would I go and pick which company to buy, right? So, say I'm a private venture capital, right? So I might not be an oil and gas person, right? But I know how to ask the right questions. And how would I use the platform? So that was my context or motivation to actually use this. So what I did was I'm going to share my screen here. And we'll bring that up in a second.
And just for some clarification, this is behind your firewall. It's on your site.
As in,
yeah, you're not on the cloud. You're actually, because one of the design features, Shravan, that you highlighted early on was the tool can operate on premises, so that the things are considered more sensitive, confidential. What version are we looking at? Are going to look at here? There.
This is a public database that I tested. So
public database only. Yep. So nothing proprietary.
Right. So like the data in Texas is found by the Railroad Commission, right?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Publication of all the historical data in Texas from 1938 to 2023, I believe. This does the whole thing, everything that's happened. Let's take a look. That was another part for you. Okay. So what I did was I took the whole data that I had from about 2023, and I just uploaded it to Kaarvi, right? So like that's the database that I had, aggregated wells, I call it. There's about 77,000 rows, 66 columns. So there's a bunch of attributes for each well. So each of the columns a well, and you can actually see when was it created, what's the API name of that well, so you can track it through all custom databases. What type of well, who is the current operator, who is the original operator, right? What county, what type of wellbore, where is it located, latitude, longitude. All the data, metadata for each API does exist, right? So then I said, okay, first let's do I like this feature here that he has called Take Kaarvi. There's all these descriptions, size, volume, temporal, schema, governance. I mean, if you have the time, I'd recommend going and testing those. Those don't interest me a lot because I like to get to the meat. So what I do like is this Hey Kaarvi thing, right? It's like the Hey Siri, right? You ask it a question and then you get, so let's select the database that I had, which was this guy. And let's say summarize this data set. Like you're a private capital person who doesn't know much about this, and you want to figure out, hey, what does this data set actually have, right? And it goes about its things, does it? So I think because it's about a lot of data, I might give it a couple of minutes, and then it might get done.
But still, it's 70. I think you said it's 77,000 rows and 66 columns per row. So we're talking a database or data set that is well into the millions of individual data points. It's a massive database, even at just because of its size. Yeah.
And you're only going to go up from here. Like for each row is a well that has maybe production data daily, right? So even if it has 5 years worth of data, then you're looking at 1,500 points times oil, water, gas, and then all the pressure points, everything. So it's just exponentially going to increase. Right?
Yeah.
So this, and remember earlier when we were talking, Shravan mentioned he had another client who was very wild with the insights, right? This is, and I said I could attest to that, is this one, right? For example, you go in and you see what the data set is. It tells you how many records, right? It's all in the USA and it's split across 2 states and 8 counties, right? So it's Texas and New Mexico. What are your top counties? How many wells, right? Then what is a mix, right? Is there oil, there's gas, there's condensate, injection. It also tells you how many dry holes were in that list. How many are active? How many are plugged and abandoned, right? This is all great data insights that I didn't ask. It's just given me all this, right? It's like one of the things I really liked here was actually it did what we call time and depth, right? So it says spud dates from 1998 to 2023, which I mentioned, right? And historically, it most actually in the modern shade era, right? So you saw that exponential growth. And you also have spud date. It also tells you how many are null, right? Which means they don't have a spud date. So then you can make a decision. Do I want to run any analysis knowing that 18% of my spud dates are incorrect? What it also tells you is if you're an engineer, you can say, hey, spud date's missing, but I could proxy it using the first production date. Because production comes after you spud, drill, and complete, right? So you could,
of course, yeah.
If you're an engineer, you bring in your own mix of knowledge into the analysis. And once you do that, if you're going to keep repeating this, you can create a workflow saying, anytime there's a miss spud date, take the first production date and do a -100, right? So
yeah, discounted by 3 months. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are really, really useful things, right? Right. So this is Permian Basin heavy, of course, Texas and New Mexico data, right? And it also says something interesting, which is vertical oil wells with a strong horizontal shale subset. So the shale boom the horizontal wells come in, and it's a confirmation that it's looking at the right things and telling me the right things, and it's not hallucinating, because at the end of the day, it's AI. You don't want it to tell you things that it just
aren't accurate or How would you, so given this query, what might you be prompted to ask it next to kind of test it out or to explore some hypothesis that you might have?
Here's something. So going back to the premise, which is I'm trying to acquire some companies, right? Let's say you want to focus on the last 10 years. So 2030 to 2023, you want to know who the major players are, or you want to see how many wells are there, what's the well count. So you can say, rank the operators by active well count in the last 10 years. Right? So what this will do in the last 10 years, give me, say you have a lot of money, you want to say, give me the top 20, right?
Yeah.
And give me the give me the top 20 and give me the list of operators who are smaller, right? So let's say operators with less than 3 guys.
Okay.
What you've done is you're saying, okay, show me what the big guys are doing, and also give me who the little guys are, right? So you can
the little bit of like a bathtub. Show me the top end and the bottom end of my bathtub. Yeah.
So you do that, and I think now Shravan's actually saying a small prayer, saying, "Hey God, make this work." I think it could come out right. So he can tell you that. He can tell you that in a second. You can see it spinning.
Shravan, I think the power of this actually is enhanced or accelerated when you can actually bring in more than one data set. We're working with one data set here. Imagine you had 3 or 4 data sets at the same time. Is Kaarvi structured so that it can take the data from one query against one data file, package that together with another file, and come up with yet more insight?
Yes. So like Meher selected the dataset on the top, all you do is select another dataset, and you can include up to 4 million rows and 150 columns in one query. And if you have more, then actually run a query, and then you can build a workflow on the query. So query 1, you have certain datasets which are like 4 million rows and 150 columns. You got the cap. Then you unselect those and reselect the ones that you didn't, and ask another query. Now you can actually make query 1 and query 2 in the query 3 as a workflow. So
really powerful. Meher, it's come back now with your insights. What's it telling us?
Right. So if you look at this, so these are the top 20 operators by active well count, right? So you have your these are your top 20 active wells in the last 10 years, right? So these are your top. It also gives you who those are, right? Who are those guys? Which Ridge Oil, all these companies, Silverback. These are all companies that are doing good in the last 10 years, and they have a decent well count. So maybe you could scoop up 5 of these, and be done with your M&A. But you see what it's done. They're like, you're coming and completely blank, and then saying, where is the whole thing, right? So that's what it's.
I'm curious at the summary. Do you want to quickly read the summary on the top? Scroll up, and if you can read the summary.
Right. So let's go. Top 20 active wells spotted since 2015. That's what it did. EOG. Of course, these are your big guys, right? EOG, Xecta, and it's telling you how many well counts they are. So this was the first part of my query, which was show me the top operators in the last 10 years. And then it gives you all these concentration. EOG alone operates the most recent active wells in the ranks, right? Top 5 operators control about 52% of all post 2015 active wells in this data set. So
that extra flavor I like when it does.
And if you noticed, it's going up to 2015 because it's going 10 years from now. It's pretty literal, right? Like it's the last 10 years. I would have thought my data is 2023, 10 years, 2013, but it's literally said, no, you're in 2026, I'm going to give you 15 years. It's pretty literal. So that's a very good thing. So you need to be on top of this, right? So there's all these things, right? 4 wells on average.
And if you notice, it is only pulling active wells.
Yes.
It is not considering the ones that are not active.
That's but also.
And was that part of the query? Did you actually say in the query, show me active only?
Yeah, operators by active well count. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't say
I want more active wells, right? So yeah, that's a good point. It does honor that. And then it gives you a little bit of more flexibility, as in, hey, I want, it's not top 20, I want top 10, right? Remove any outliers or all this. Things that you could just put it in a PowerPoint or something, right? Like, so all of these. And again, this export button is pretty useful, right? So your cultivated data set, put it in a PowerPoint or do anything you want to. So ingestion, and then one of the things that you can also do is plotting, right? Like if you can plot data, any missing data sets, you can ask it. For example, there was about 18% non-spot dates, right? How do you do that? So you're barely scratching at this stage. Like, hey, Kaarvi is your first introduction, and you're saying you're playing with the data set. Now there's a level 2, which is actually all of these, just profiling and fixing, where you'd say, okay, those 18% spot days are null, do a 3-month, take your first production date, do a 3-month minus. Things like that. Actually, let's do that if we have time. Let's do a quick. So
I think there's a minute or two more, but yeah, I do want to wrap up.
Sure. So that hey Kaarvi is if you want to be just like your do this, do that, the things that most people are used to, but in an actual data set. So things like that, like how many unique UWIs are there. These are all things that I ran, right? And it tells you all this, summarize this data set. Transformation is where an engineer would come in and say, show me the production data. So your question earlier was, what if there are no data sets? So all oil and gas goes back to that API reference. So that API tracks all the well history, all production data, right? So you upload it with that API, and then you say, don't just show me the statistics, but actually tell me who are those wells, which are those wells, what is the production, what is the average decline year on year, things like that. You could do all of those in Kaarvi. And the good thing is, I am not writing any formula or anything. Right?
Yes, it's no code.
Yeah. The style that people are used to now. So I think
that was my point too. Like you shouldn't have written a single code and you're already transforming.
And that's a very, very important one, because those oil and gas engineers, right? They're geologists. They do some level of coding, but that's maybe 10% of the workforce. Executives don't want to do it, or they did it. They're there now. They did it in the past. So how that is also a barrier. Do I have to do any coding to get to this AI part? So you've removed that essentially, right? Because you've enabled the agents to do that. So you just say, I want this, code is done, and that's it.
Yeah, well, it illustrates so many of the points we've already made: the speed, the impact of no code on the actual workflow, the range of manipulations that you can actually do with the data. I think if you had your hands on this and you had an evening and to play around with this, the things that you could learn to, what did you discover that would be a really eye-opening.
Like, for example, I did have a lot more than an evening because Shravan gave me access, and this is all the code it did. I didn't write this code. It figured out that it has to aggregate operators on drilling times. It was a test I was running for drilling metrics. And it shows you, I said, give me only operators with more than 100 wells, and then tell me how long they're taking to drill based on all the data that we had. And I said, how do you define it? Rank it. So calculate all. So all this code is actually done by it, and it just creates this workflow. So you can go in and say, load your data. What am I looking at? You make your choices. And then you say, how do I want it? I want it as a database. You can also take it back to your own analysis, right? So this thing is where the engineer comes in and says, yeah, go validate this thing. And then run it. So it says it is ready to execute. This does not happen. This, I think, is kind of useful because it doesn't automatically spit something out. You go validate it. Or is everything running correctly? And then you hit run now. And it does that. Yeah.
And to add to what Meher just showed, I think that pipeline was generated by a prompt. Like it was not even built manually.
Correct.
So you give a prompt and it generates that ETL.
Yeah, this relates back to I think a point we made very early on, which was how do you overcome resistance to using these tools? And this is an illustration of this whole question of transparency. It's the black box. You take the cover off the black box and show the code that was actually built to execute the query. Takes the resistance down because professionals who are normally the ones who would do the coding themselves or they would look at the code, now they can look at the code. They can see how it actually works. If someone's watching this video, attending this webinar today, what's the first step that they might want to think about carrying out if they recognize that some of these data issues are the kinds of issues that they've got in their organization? Meher, what would you counsel them to do as a first step?
First starting point I would do is define your use case, right? Like what is that you want to get out of it? Because we've seen cases, you're seeing examples of people trying to emulate shrimp brains or something. So you don't want to use things for that, right? You want to clearly define, hey, I have this data set, I want to identify this, or I want to do something, right? So your data set and your use case definition comes really, really important. Now, once that thing is done, what it starts with is what you identify what your bad data sets are, right? And then you define thresholds, as in, hey, even if my latitude is wrong, if I have the data as county, who's operating, I'm okay. So you define your thresholds, what are your acceptable ranges, and what's your non-negotiables? Like this field has to be there, right? I cannot work without this. So once you've decided all that, you have you know where you're going, you know what data is there to get you there, right? The second thing is, once you do this, what you do is you get upstream of the data, which is most quality problems are interesting. Like after the data is acquired, you then look at it and then you say, this is incorrect. But the day is fast, right?
Too late. Yeah.
Right. So you doing this, you push a QC process close to the source, right? So that's a very, very big thing that organically comes when you start going down this road, right? Manual checks will always be there, but you cannot scale, right? So first thing is you identify your use case, then identify your thresholds, and then once you've done that, everything else sort of organically falls into stone.
Well, this you sort of hint at it, but what is it that they should avoid doing?
So Kaarvi is built for. I'm sorry. I just want to add this point to do a target analysis or target process, because we don't want AI to hallucinate, and which is very common in all the agents that's out there. So we wanted to we intentionally added that guardrails to focus on whatever data you selected. That means if you are asking, have a data set that doesn't have anything to do with what kind of a drilling it did follow in this past 100 years, and you ask, it's going to come back and say that that particular data is not available, but if you provide these kind of columns or particular columns, I can do that. So it is intelligent enough to say that this is missing and I want these kind of data, but it doesn't really want to answer your question because the data is not there. So that was put into place in guardrails. Sorry, man.
That's why it was important. Oh, sorry, Jerry, you were asking what should they avoid, right?
Yeah, what should they avoid doing? I mean, it's you boil the ocean here, or there's all kinds of things you could really mess up. But what should they avoid doing if they decide to go down a path to fix their data challenges and improve governance and the like?
So they should stop treating this as a one-time exercise, right? Like
Yeah.
If you fix your data today, declare victory, and move on, you have daily data coming in. If you need to establish a process where that data coming in is also good. So you have to be on top of this and not treat this as a one-time exercise. You need to constantly keep looking at it and make sure you fix those processes that are giving you the data. And eventually, over time, you would have got to that stage where you can declare.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, you need to be on top of it. And it's like brushing teeth. You have to do it every day.
Yeah. I think we've got time for a couple of questions. Just looking at the chat here. Any that, let's see if in the Q&A box, if there's anything listed there. Any seed question, any questions we should be addressing? All right, we'll take a pause there.
Yeah, we have a few. Let's let me bring these up. So one question we have here: could Kaarvi preserve the full lineage of a transformed data set so engineers can see where the data came from, what changed, or who approved it?
Oh, Shravan, I think that's a good one for you.
Right. So Kaarvi has a whole module built into it called data lineage. And it doesn't only say where the data is coming from or all the truth source and what versioning it went to. It also points out to which version is the latest one by marking it in green color. So it actually colors the version as green, and it gives you a 3D view of the lineage from where it started by scanning the metadata. And even it doesn't really care if you have the document with the same name. It actually scans your metadata hash. So it knows exactly which one is the latest and which one is not. And it's all done by AI. So it also keeps a track of what you're actually looking at, what kind of data you're looking at. And whenever there is a data set that you haven't checked for lineage, it puts that into orphans. And you can go and check the orphans list, and you'll see all the datasets that are not having a lineage or not have been processed. So it does not only point to the datasets; it's actually pointing to the schemas and also databases too. So it can do go level higher and get the whole dataset scan.
Yeah. Very, very handy because, again, back to the engineering mindset, you want to know where the data came from, how it's been manipulated before you trust it, and the results that you get. Any other questions out there?
Yeah, we've got a few more here. I think we have time for like maybe two more. Here's one for you. How would Kaarvi handle common oil and gas data problems, like inconsistent well names, mixed units, missing production values, duplicate timestamps, or mismatched surveillance data?
Meher, you wanna answer that question, or you want to answer that question?
You could build in rules. Like if there's missing data, you could say, for example, if there's 25 days production data out of a month, you could say, hey, put in an average or find the trend and impute that value, right? So there's multiple data augmentation things that are in there. I've only used a few where I was checking for null values and all that, missing production numbers or trying to come up with data sets based on the relation I would define. Shravan, will you know more?
Right. So basically, I wanted to hear it from you because you have been testing. And sorry to put you on the spot, but point is, I think Kaarvi deals with all quality issues. When I say all, not just duplicates, nulls, it looks for pattern validations. It's going to look for fuzzy logic, fuzzy duplicates. It's going to look for anything that is off in the anomalies, right, in the anomaly perspective. And it is not just looking at that. It is also saying, okay, I'll give you a manual way. So AI does its part, but Kaarvi also always has a manual integrity check, process check. So you can run through AI, you get a result, but you can do it manually and you get the same result. And you can always check. So you can opt for either AI or manual until you get confidence on it. And we deal with multiple issues and multiple subcategories of issues. So you guys should check out something called profiling in fix module in Kaarvi. And that, like I said, every module is an agent on the top of the tree. And whenever you initiate that, it's gonna behave according to the data that you upload. So as soon as you load a kind of data, the whole system aligns to that particular data set or schema.
Any other questions? So one more.
Yeah, let's get one more in there. We have some more, but we'll make sure and get back to everybody that asked a question individually after the webinar. One more question for you. How does Kaarvi support repeatable closed loop workflows rather than one-off data cleanup projects?
That's a great question. So we have built-in workflows methodology, like while you are prompting and building your work, your tasks. There is this feature there where you can initiate that feature and add pipeline 1, pipeline 2, pipeline 3 as an n number of pipelines and build a workflow. And you can also share that workflow across your organizations with a click of a button. And we also have something called living pipeline. And this actually works with the live sync feature that we have in the data ingestion. So whenever your actual database outside somewhere changes, the Kaarvi detects the change depending on which configuration you selected. It's going to pull in the new data, and that triggers the pipeline that you built. So basically, I call this living pipeline rather than a live pipeline, because that pipeline knows exactly when the data changed and the output gets updated. And the great part about Kaarvi is you can actually publish an ETL pipeline to a dashboard directly with a click of a button. So that means your executive management is looking at the live data change in the reports as it happens.
As it happens, yeah.
Right. So that's that can be done today.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. And I think we're literally, because we're at the earliest stages of AI adoption and evolution, the product is going to continue to evolve and get better and better and better. And so I think we're at the very start of it feels like a 2-hour conversation about the power of these tools. Thank you both, Meher and Shravan, for coming on the webinar today.
No, it was great.
And thank you for those of you who are attending online, taking time out of your day to learn about how others in the industry are making progress and advancing the state of the industry. And we'll turn it back.
Thanks again, everyone.